to have a conversation about nonprofit websites, how to build nonprofit websites that convert. And we see tons of situations where nonprofits will come to us with questions about their website or complaints about why their website is giving them issues in terms of conversion. And a lot of times there are some really easily avoidable issues, and a lot of times, it's just about having the knowledge to be able to know, where to make changes or where to make edits to their strategy. And really a lot of times it has to do more with restraint than with what they're doing wrong or not doing. And so a couple of things that we wanted to kind of look at, and I took a couple, I made a little list of things to look at that were kind of common mistakes. So why do nonprofits miss out on engaging their audiences? Many nonprofits that we run into, at least, they haven't really identified their target audience properly. And so when it comes to identifying your target audience, it has a lot more to do with, getting specific and thinking about who is the audience that you serve. And that can be your online audience may be different from your offline audience. Your online audience may be different from the people who use your services. And so that is something that needs to be determined. Sometimes you can tell from looking at your, Google Analytics or your other sort of analytic history to see, who is it that's engaging with your website, what pages are they engaging with, and that sort of thing. That can be somewhat helpful. And obviously doing user surveys and things like that can be helpful as well to understand if you're really making the match between your online audience and your, your design, your content, all of that sort of thing. So a big mistake that a lot of people try to make is they don't try to make, a lot of people do make, is they look to other organizations or other organizations' websites to find an example, and they copy it. So, if you're a food bank, for instance, in Denver, and you're looking for examples of other websites for inspiration, you may find that there are some great websites that meet your design aesthetic and so forth in another industry, and those are fine to look at. But a lot of times what happens is nonprofits will model their website after something like that, and it really doesn't match what they do. It doesn't really speak to their audience, and so that mismatch can occur sometimes just by following a template approach or following something that really doesn't apply to who they are. So the other thing is, a lot of times nonprofits look at their website as a encyclopedia of who they are. So anyone who comes to our website needs to be able to find everything about our organization in one pass. And what ends up happening is by trying to target everyone, they end up targeting no one, because nobody can actually find what they're looking for. And user engagement is tougher and tougher as there's more crowded, space gets more crowded with people who are serving niches. So often, probably, I think statistics have shown that over 70% of web traffic comes from search results. So when someone is looking for something and they don't know who you are already, they're going to be typing in, Food Bank Denver, for instance, and there's going to be a list of results that show up. It's not going to be just one. And so if they come to your website and they don't see immediately what they're looking for, they're going to click the back button and go to the next result and see if it fits their what they're looking for better. And so you have a very short amount of time to kind of capture that. That being said, when we go to identify your online audience, and when you are doing that as an organization, you need to kind of look at sort of your user funnel. So at the top of the funnel is your broadest online audience, and that broadest online audience is also the most fickle, the least committed to your organization. So those people are people who, they don't care if it's you that they interact with, they just want to interact with someone who can meet the need that they're looking for. And so a lot of times your target online audience, the one that you're trying to capture in that 2 or 3 seconds, is the audience that that is the most fickle. And so when you target and you tailor your message, your tailored message is going to be a message that is clear, it's concise, and it's engaging to that least engaged portion of your audience. Those people who are volunteers, those people who are longtime donors or major donors, those people don't mind coming back, and having to dig a little bit to find what they're looking for. Those people aren't going to bounce from your website as quickly, and so you can target them in different areas of your website, not necessarily at the top of your homepage. So that's a little bit about engagement and what we see with that. I'm kind of solo because no one else is able to get connected. So we had 2 other people who were going to join us, but it's not happening. So the other thing that's interesting to look at, and something that we often will look at, is a lot of times nonprofits think that they're targeting their audience well through their content, and maybe even visually they are, but they're not necessarily doing so through the proper markup, through the proper structure of their content, and so forth. So if we look at, there's a little tool that I like to use called Nibbler, and if you search Nibbler, you'll be able to find this, nibbler.skilltide.com, and we can find let's just look for a nonprofit website that we can test this out. So Denver Food Bank, obviously if they show up highly in search results, most likely they are going to have a decent website, I would hope. All right, so let's take a look at Denver Food Bank and see what kind of content they're putting out there. foodbankrockies.org. It's completely unplanned, so I haven't even looked at this before, so hopefully the result is of interest. Let's see. So basically what Nibbler does, it's not entirely accurate. I find that when you look at these sort of rating tools, they try to create a scorecard that isn't always necessarily the most accurate because it's an automated score, but the content of the testing is often useful if you kind of dig into it a little bit. So let's see. Let's see if we can get this. Ooh, we may have someone joining us. Let's see if this works. Yay.
Hey.
Hey, Meg.
How's it going?
Good. Hey, why don't you introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, so my name is Meg Delagrange, and I'm the creative director of WannaPixel.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us. Feeling a little alone here. Let's see.
Yeah, I was having those good old connection troubles.
Yeah, that's that has been fun. Okay, so I'm looking at Nibbler, which is nibbler.skilltide.com, and I've just posted it in the channel. And the thing that I like to look, I mean, there's tons of stuff on here that's interesting, like accessibility, all that other stuff. Some I take with a grain of salt. So headings got a score of 9.9, but let's go ahead and look at that. So what it does is it creates a word cloud that basically tells me, oh, hold on just one second here. So the word cloud is, the biggest words are the words that are used most frequently or have the highest impact in the heading. And so we have hope, hungry, kids, Rockies, and updates. Probably the two that are most, well, maybe the three that are most connected to their mission would be hungry and Rockies might be the two. Although I don't know who would be searching for Rockies necessarily. Kids and hope seem like maybe not things that people would be searching for. I mean, if you're looking for food assistance or something like that, I'm not sure that you would necessarily search for, you know, hungry kids. I mean, it doesn't seem like maybe that would be what you'd be looking for. So it seems like it might be more relevant if, you know, if food and bank were bigger words, right? And those are things that you can sort of look at and see, are we really matching our message? Is our content matching our message? And you can sort of adjust your strategy accordingly in those cases. So the other thing that we see a lot is, and Meg can speak to this a lot more even than I can, and that is, you know, there are some design things, some design choices that people make, both with their content and with their design structure, that can really affect how people engage with them. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so when you're designing, some of the common myths that I think people have is trying to cram too much information into the first fold of the top fold of your website. They're trying to cram all of their information into that first view that you get when you open up your website. And what happens is that there's so many things competing for your attention that you really don't know what you're even supposed to be looking at. So if I do design like a really content heavy area, I just make typography decisions like bold headings, or trying to use as many icons and images to convey the message visually, so that, are you guys able to hear me? Somebody's saying, okay, perfect. That's awesome. Yeah. So I basically, we choose what's the most important thing that we want to convey, and we make those design decisions to kind of tell that story. Nate, is there something specific you wanted me to talk about when it comes to actually designing the content?
I think a lot of people make choices with their design that are self-serving. So it's like, what would make me feel good about my website, rather than what would my users want to see? And so a lot of times in the organization, you have so many different opinions, and rather than thinking, what are we trying to communicate? What's the kind of targeted, tailored message? It's like, how can we incorporate everybody's opinions into our design? And so that's where you get,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's where you get things like, sliders, for instance, where you have here's a presentation slideshow of 30 things about our company that go through a scrolling slideshow that nobody will ever see, and so those sort of things tend to happen.
Right. Yeah, there's that whole fascination with this, oh my gosh, we saw this and it's so cool. Can we put this on our website? And even when I was newly into design, I wanted to put all these cool flashing lights into everything. And then I found out people weren't really benefited by all of the fancy stuff. Definitely doesn't mean you don't make it look beautiful.
Yeah. The other thing too, what's that, Marissa?
Like a beautiful simplicity that's clear is much more effective than like extras.
Yeah, I actually have a quote. I think one of our favorite quotes is the like design. I wish I could remember the quote, but you basically, when design is the best, is when you've like taken away from it until you can't take anything away anymore. And the other just slogan that I kind of like is that clear always wins over clever. Like,
Love that.
yeah.
Do I still sound like a robot?
Yes, you sound like a robot. You might need to disconnect and reconnect or something. Yeah. Yeah. Well, the other thing too, and I know you are like a hawk about these things, Meg, is about the concept of in your user flow and your user experience, those trapdoors that lead people out of your user flow.
Yes. Yes. And I used to think it was cool to put social media icons. This is just one example. Putting social media icons in your header or like near the top of your website, because look, we're on social media. It's so cool. But what happens is people click on those icons, those social media icons, and suddenly they're on Facebook, and like seconds later they're, oh, my friend just posted this, and they're away from your website, they're off doing their own thing. And so I also think that I'm a big fan of mobile menu icons. Even like Wanapixel's website still has some more like conservative menu options. If you're really wanting to tell your story, you bring people to your homepage and just bring them on down the page instead of having so many places to click off right away. So you first tell them your story, and then when they want to explore and go learn more or go to a different area of the website, they can do so by clicking on the menu, the menu icon, just like this website that we recently launched.
Yep. Yeah, I think one thing that we've changed a lot, and we actually have clients ask us not to do this all the time, and we have to keep explaining. But with the concept that scrolling is the most natural motion, especially since now in most cases 60% or more of nonprofit site visitors are mobile or tablet visitors. So scrolling is a very natural motion. And people tend to still have this concept that they want to, whether it's on the top of the page or further down the page, they want to put 10 things in one screen. And so the idea of having each sort of screen build on each other in terms of user flow, but keeping one thought per screen. So as you scroll, you're kind of getting one at the most two things to digest per screen as you scroll down the page. A lot of people kind of look at that, and a lot of our clients look at this section, for instance, of the page, and they'll say, well, that's a big area to take up with just testimonials about our services. Can't we also include news and events and blah, blah, blah? And this, the human mind doesn't digest things at that rate of speed. So anyway. So yeah, so we talked a little bit about user, defining your audience, targeting your audience. We talked about, designing for users, not having pitfalls for, trapdoors where they're swept away from your page, never to return, and those sort of things. And one thing that we sort of touched on, but it's worth repeating, is this idea that nonprofits have that they need to talk to all of their audiences at once. This sort of bipolar schizophrenia, idea of, oh, well, we have this audience that is donors, and we have this audience that is people that we serve, and we have this audience over here that's volunteers, and blah, blah, blah. And those all need to be targeted on our homepage. And you simply cannot, it's just, you can't do that. Many user studies have shown that you got to have one target audience on your homepage, and that, speaking directly to that audience is the best and the highest conversion that you can have. That being said, we do want to identify the other audiences, and we want to rank them in order of commitment to your organization. So the ones that are least committed and the broadest audience are the ones that we want to target first, and then we want to go down the page, and, not necessarily down the page, but in our user flows, we want to target, the ones that are more committed later in the user flow, volunteers, donors, those kinds of things. The last thing that I want to talk about is a lot of people in nonprofits have a sense that we're going to do this great big thing. We got this grant, or we got this donation. We're going to do this great new website. We're going to go through this whole process. And then once it's done, that'll be done. We don't have to think about it again. And obviously, if you think about it, that just doesn't make sense. So two things. One is that just because you have a great website doesn't mean that people are going to visit it. You can do everything perfectly. You can have your SEO done perfectly. If you do it, set it, and forget it, it doesn't mean you're going to have people visit your website. Building the traffic to your website, building the audience of your website is an ongoing effort. And there is no such thing, people have this sort of buzzword and buzz concepts in the industry that you can automate marketing, you can automate, your social media, whatever. You can't automate it. That's just a myth. It all takes a lot of work. It all takes a lot of effort to continue to engage, to continue to create fresh content, and to, continue to, reach that audience. And so I think that's something that's important and that we want to continue to kind of look at is, what do we do after we launch? So Meg has a lot of experience with that stuff too. So.
Yeah, and I think we not only have, I've learned a lot through the awesome organizations that we've worked with, but also just the things that we've done as an organization, or a company in social media, or with content, where we've learned the hard way that we have to produce, be talking about, oops, I'm sorry, not hearing me. We're more successful when we are producing our own content. Nate, is there something specific you want me to talk about when it comes to content, like social media channels?
Yeah, I think I think Marissa probably has a lot to say about sort of the content creation and marketing piece. But the social media piece, you work on that a lot. You oversee it a lot, and you kind of understand the fact that it's not automated in any way, shape, or form. It's very right. It's a lot of work, right? So
we do have a lot of tools that help us, and for clients that we have, that we do some of the social media for them, working with them and doing some content for them. We do have a lot of tools where we spend time putting a schedule of content in. We have a content schedule, and we schedule all of that a week in advance, always a week in advance, because then we have an editor who comes through and edits all of the content. And then we also have someone who just oversees all the links. We make sure any third-party links that we're sharing don't have inappropriate content on them, and that the message is kind of matches our message and aligns with our vision or a client's vision. And then we have different channels where we can reuse content. So the really cool thing is that if you do something like a live blab about your organization, you can then take that video that you've created and you can post it on multiple channels and you can share it several times. But you can also take that content and put it into a blog post or an email or a news story that you also share. So you can, there are like just a lot of ways that you can take content and use it multiple different ways. And then also just sharing your content once isn't really enough. Typically we share content, I think once or twice a week, and we keep re-sharing that content, you know, different times to make sure people are getting it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect. We really emphasize to our clients that. Wait, can you hear me?
You're still pretty garbled. Maybe, I don't know what to say. Could just be unplugging your mic cord or something.
Now I can't hear you at all. Yes.
Yeah.
That's a great topic, creating your own content, your own unique content versus using others.
Well, so one thing that, so a lot of people are doing a lot of work, but they're not doing it in a smart way. So we often run into nonprofits who feel that, well, social media is a big thing, so we should post a lot on social media. So they have somebody posting unique content on social media that is isolated there. Or the same thing happens with newsletters, email newsletters, where people will write these great long articles for email newsletters. They have a click-through rate of 2%, and their email list is 4,000, and they send it out, you know, once a month or whatever. They've put all that work into that content, and they're not getting any benefit out of it. So, you know, when it comes to your website and making your website show up well in search results, fresh content is really key. And the more that you create of it in an original voice, not copying and pasting, not, you know, all these other things, the better, you know, the more authority that your domain has, the more that Google looks at your domain as being relevant to your audience, the more chance of it understanding who you are based on the content that you write. So there's tons of advantages there to having a regular content creation schedule, which is a lot of work. All of your, you know, nonprofit team members will hate you for it, obviously, because it's not, they don't perceive it as being the main thing that they do. But when you do that and then you distribute it through channels like emails, letters, and social media and things like that, the chance of getting thousands more eyeballs on that content is much higher. And even if people aren't looking at the content you're creating, it's still elevating the status of your website and the domain in search results. So, you know, it cannot be underestimated. You know, people like to go after Google Grant for AdWords, and then they waste it, $10,000 of free advertising a month with poor targeting, or they're sending people to a page that nobody wants to visit and they bounce right off. And they use it as a crutch or an excuse to not create fresh content. And you can't. Fresh content is absolutely vital to you know, to the growth of your audience and the visibility of your website and search results.
Yeah, and Nick, can we talk a little bit about how to create engagement? Because I think we've learned a lot about the way to have something that you're offering to your audience, something that they can, a reason that they want to engage with you, follow you? Are you just like pushing your own agenda, or
Yeah.
are you offering something to them?
Right. Yeah, I see a lot of two things that happen. One is people get really lazy, and so they end up reposting everyone else's content, which is pretty useless. Or they get into a rut of doing one thing, like maybe, and these are fine, but in moderation, posting quotes of someone else or whatever it might be. So none of that, if it's easy and it feels like it's not a conversation, then you may as well not do it, because you're wasting your time. So if social media and even email is meant to be a conversation, it's not meant to be a bullhorn. And so, it's not me just talking out. It's me engaging and is understanding, what are you interested in? Why do you care about our organization? And I care about, what you want. And especially when we're talking about millennial users or digital natives, they have no time for someone talking at them. They want to know quickly, succinctly, how can you empower me to fulfill my mission, rather than how can I, understand your organization better? How can I support you more? That's not really the way that they perceive things or approach things. A great theory, and I suppose a great book as well, is Jab, Jab, Left Hook, which is basically, the concept is that I engage with you on a personal level. I put things out there that are targeted towards you, that are helpful to you. And then the left hook is me making the ask. So me saying, hey, join our event. Hey, donate to our cause. And so it's not this needy ask. It's give, ask. And so that concept is great to just sort of simplify, your thought towards social media and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think we share all this like humbly, like we're working on ours too. That's the fun part. We're always evolving and learning.
Something new every day.
Yep.
Yeah, and definitely, I mean, the stuff that we're talking about now some of them are things that a year ago we were doing, and today we have a different perspective. We've learned, we've researched, we've those sort of things. So are there any questions about anything that we should chat about? I think you're a little clearer now, Marissa.
I haven't said anything.
I heard you chuckle or something, so. No, but you're not garbled anymore, so if you want to talk, now's your chance.
Yeah, I agree.
Now that I can't think of anything to say. I had so much to say before.
Yeah, Marissa, actually, do you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yes, I am the Chief Marketing Officer at One Pixel. So I am involved kind of in the creation of content, in the design, in the writing, in the web strategy. There's a lot going on. I love it all. Feel like I'm in a lot of different worlds sometimes, but it's really good because we get to sort of pull it all together, and I get to have an overview of all those different worlds and help the different parts of the team communicate. And so as far as creating engaging content for nonprofits, one of the things we've been doing a lot lately is speaking to our nonprofit clients about the writing piece of it, or the content creation, not necessarily writing, because it includes the imagery and the way it's all put together. And so that's a subject I really care about, because even though this is kind of old knowledge in a way. To some people, it's new still that your website is not a billboard. It's not just something you put out there and hope that people will stumble across it. It is, you always have to be driving traffic back to that website with fresh and unique content. And people really expect that in today's world, and that's how they engage, and that's how they find you, is through all the social media platforms. And also, while we're talking about social media platforms, Tech for Good had a really good article on choosing the ones that are right for you, because I mean, there's new ones coming out, it seems, every day. And so it's really important to understand your target audience. So maybe they're primarily on Snapchat, or maybe they're not on Snapchat. Maybe they're primarily on Facebook and Twitter. So it can be any combination. Just from off the top of my head, I would recommend really focusing on a few, not like 7 or 8, although maybe some people, well, that's actually a bandwidth discussion. Some people might have the bandwidth to, internally to focus on 7 or 8, but mainly you have to know where your target audience is and put the content there where they're going to see it. Yeah,
Yep.
I thought that was a really great article from Tech for Good Denver.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest pitfalls I see is nonprofits not having an identity of their own. And so they think that because something worked for someone else, that it's going to work for them as well. And logically, if you just stop and think about it, like what you were saying about selecting your social media platform, it takes 2 seconds to think about who their audience is and where they live. And just because, Snapchat was really successful for this homeless initiative over here, doesn't mean it's going to be successful for, a animal shelter or, whatever it may be. So those are things that you have to, stop and think. And it, like I was saying earlier, it goes for web design. Just because it looks great for, Global Voices to have a newsfeed style website doesn't mean that fits for a foundation or something like that. So it's all about finding your voice, finding your identity, all of those things. So. Cool. Well, I think we're going to wrap this up. And sorry for the technical difficulties that we've had on the call, but I think it would be fun to kind of do this again sometime, maybe next week. And if anybody has any cool topics that they want to cover or even be a part of the conversation, feel free to let us know. You can certainly tweet us at WannaPixel, I believe. Is that correct?
Yep.
Twitter.com. And feel free to share this with anybody that you think would be benefited by it. I did record it. I remember to this time, so it will be available. All right. Thanks, Marissa and Meg, for joining.
You're welcome. See you guys.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.